Think of a butterfly. You are probably imagining something like this. A flower, summer light, colorful wings, something delicate floating past. It is one of the most universal symbols of transformation. In dozens of cultures, the butterfly represents the soul, rebirth, lightness. We place it in children's books, in tattoos, on condolence cards, but there is one question almost nobody asks about it. What exactly happens inside the chrysalis? I had spent years seeing it without asking myself that question. And when I finally asked it and searched for the answer, I had to reread the source because it was not what I expected. Inside that casing, the caterpillar's body dissolves. Its tissues break down into a soup of cells. Most of what the caterpillar was stops existing. And from that material, from those fragments, a completely new organism is built. It is not growth. It is not maturity. It is something else. Today we are going to understand exactly what that something else is. Butterflies did not always exist alongside flowers. They appeared earlier. Lepidoptera, the order that includes butterflies and moths, have been on the planet for about 200 million years. Non-flying dinosaurs were still alive. Flowers were scarce. Primitive butterflies probably fed on spores and flowerless plants. But around 100 million years ago, flowering plants began their own expansion. And that is when one of the longest alliances in the history of life began. Flower and butterfly, each one transforming the other. The flower offered nectar. The butterfly carried pollen. In that exchange, both specialized together over tens of millions of years. As a result, today there are around 22,000 species of daytime butterflies within an order that includes more than 160,000 species of Lepidoptera. They are found on every continent except Antarctica. They survived the extinction that eliminated the dinosaurs. They survived the glacial periods. They have spent 100 million years in that same exchange with plants, a symbol of fragility with 200 million years of history. Before talking about the butterfly, we have to talk about what comes before it, because the caterpillar is not simply a small butterfly. It is a completely different ecological strategy. The caterpillar exists for one thing only: to eat. Its entire body is a machine of accumulation, with no wings, no complex eyes, no reproductive organs, only powerful jaws, a long intestine that takes up most of the body, and legs for moving around. Some caterpillars multiply their weight thousands of times in just a few weeks, and they are selective. The monarch butterfly caterpillar eats only milkweed, a plant that contains toxins called cardenolides. The caterpillar does not die from them, it stores them. That poison will remain in the adult butterfly's body and make it unpleasant to birds. The caterpillar does not only eat, it arms itself. Caterpillars also produce silk. A special structure creates the thread that some use to build shelters or cover themselves. The silkworm, which is actually the caterpillar of a moth, produces a thread of up to 1.5 kilometers in a single cocoon. That thread is the same one humans have used for thousands of years. When I look at a caterpillar now, I no longer see something that is not yet a butterfly. I see an organism with its own logic. The butterfly is another story. So what happens inside? When the caterpillar is ready, it stops eating, finds a safe place, and attaches itself. It secretes silk and forms the chrysalis directly from its own hardened skin. From the outside, it looks like stillness. Inside, something happens that biology took a long time to understand. The caterpillar produces enzymes that break down its own tissues, muscles, organs. Almost everything dissolves. This is called histolysis. What remains is a broth of nourishing cells and a set of special structures called imaginal discs. Those discs existed in the caterpillar's body from the beginning, inactive. They carry the blueprint of the new body. Where will the wings go? Where will the legs go? Where will the eyes go? At that moment, they activate. From the imaginal discs and the cellular material, a new organism is built. That is histogenesis. The process can last from a few days to several months, depending on the species. What makes this mechanism truly strange is this. Some studies in neurobiology show that certain butterflies preserve memories formed during the caterpillar stage, even though the nervous system has gone through an almost complete restructuring. What exactly is preserved in the structure of those nerve cells? It remains an open question. Something in the information survives the destruction of the body. When I read that for the first time, I dismissed it, thinking it was a mistake in interpretation. I searched for it again. It was not a mistake. Memory can survive the dissolution of the body that held it. I do not have a simpler way to say it. I am not saying this as decoration. I am saying it because it means the question, is it the same organism, has a genuinely complex answer in the case of the butterfly. Science has not yet closed it. A butterfly wing is not simply a flying surface. It is a structure with several parallel functions. The wing is covered in scales, and that is not a metaphor. They are real chitin scales, overlapping like tiles on a roof. They give the wing its color, and that color appears in two different ways. The first is pigmentary. Chemical compounds absorb certain wavelengths and reflect others. The second is structural. The nano-relief of the scale refracts light and creates color without pigment. That is how the blue of many morpho butterflies works. Under the microscope, its wing is layered nanophotonics. If the scales are removed from a morpho wing, the wing becomes transparent. The scales also regulate temperature. They absorb solar heat in the morning when the body is cold. They reflect it when there is a risk of overheating. They repel water thanks to the nano-relief that prevents it from accumulating. And in some species, they carry aromatic compounds to attract a mate. There is another less obvious function. The scales are sacrificial material. When they come into contact with a spider web or with the fingers of a predator, they detach. A wing that loses part of its scales remains functional. The edge is lost to save the whole. The butterfly has 5 senses, but none of them works like ours. Sight. Compound eyes made of thousands of lenses allow it to see ultraviolet light outside the human range. Flowers that look simple to us have ultraviolet patterns for the butterfly, landing tracks that point toward the nectar. Some males carry V-shaped patterns on their wings that are invisible to us, but distinguishable to females of their species. Taste in the feet. The chemoreceptors in a butterfly's feet are thousands of times more sensitive than our taste receptors. When it lands on a leaf, the butterfly tastes its chemical composition in fractions of a second. That is how it determines whether the leaf is suitable for laying eggs. Hearing with the wings. Some Lepidoptera detect ultrasound through mechanoreceptors in their wings. It is a defense against bats. When the butterfly detects an echolocation signal, it abruptly changes direction. Some nocturnal species go even further. They emit their own ultrasonic click, disorienting the bat, a counterattack made of sound. Smell. The butterfly's antennae are covered in chemoreceptors. The male of certain species can detect the female's pheromones from kilometers away. A few molecules in the correct configuration activate the entire navigation system. All of the above prepares us for this section, because the monarch butterfly, Danaus plexippus, does something that deserves its own paragraph. Every year, tens of millions of monarchs begin a journey from Canada and the northern United States to the Oyamel forests in the Sierra Madre of Michoacan, here in Mexico. At a distance of between 3,000 and 5,000 kilometers, they arrive at the same forests, at the same trees, with a precision that has amazed researchers for decades. The paradox is that none of those butterflies has made that journey before. The previous generation died in summer. It is the first time for each of them. That phrase stops me every time I read it. First time, no map, no experience, and they arrive. How do they find the way? Studies have identified 3 mechanisms. The first is an internal solar clock linked to the circadian cycle, which calculates direction according to the position of the sun and the time of day. The second is magnetoreception. Magnetite crystals have been found in the monarch's antennae, allowing it to perceive Earth's magnetic field. The third is polarized light, which works as a reference even under cloudy skies. 3 independent compasses in an insect whose brain fits inside a pinhead. And Michoacan is the destination. The forests of Angangueo, El Rosario, and Sierra Chinqua, the same forests reached by the monarchs that came before and those that came before them. This is where the story changes tone. The monarch butterfly is in decline. In 1997, the overwintering population in Mexico was estimated at close to 1 billion individuals. In some years after 2010, that number fell to 20 or 30 million. There are several causes. The first is milkweed. The monarch caterpillar eats only that plant. In the agricultural areas of the United States, the massive use of herbicides in genetically modified corn and soybean fields eliminated almost all wild milkweed from those regions. Without the plant, the caterpillar cannot complete its cycle. Without the caterpillar, there is no butterfly. The second is logging in the forests of Michoacan. The Oyamel firs where the monarch hibernates are fragile. Illegal deforestation and agricultural pressure on those slopes reduce the available space. The third is climate change, which alters the timing between plant flowering, temperature, and migration periods. A mismatch of just a few days can break the entire cycle. And here is the lesson that is difficult to understand. The monarch did not disappear because someone wanted it to disappear. It disappeared as a consequence of decisions made while thinking about something else. The herbicide served the harvest. Logging provided wood. The climate changed for reasons far removed from the forests of Michoacan, and the monarch paid the price for that sum of disconnected decisions. This is where the story stops being only about butterflies and starts being about how we make decisions without seeing the complete system. That is what happens when we do not understand the system. The butterfly does not only live in gardens, it works. Pollination. Butterflies are important pollinators of long tubular flowers, where bees cannot reach with their proboscis. In tropical ecosystems, they pollinate between 10 and 15% of flowering plants. In temperate climates, their role is smaller but real. Food chain. Caterpillars are a crucial source of protein for birds during the breeding season. Studies show that if caterpillars are not available at the precise moment, chicks do not thrive. Adult butterflies are food for bats, spiders, dragonflies, and some birds. Indicator. Butterflies are one of the most sensitive bioindicators of the state of an ecosystem. Their species diversity responds quickly to changes in soil quality, pollution, and habitat fragmentation. In Europe, monitoring butterfly populations is one of the standard methods of ecological evaluation. If butterflies disappear, the system is already failing. The butterfly is only the most visible signal. You return to the image from the beginning. The butterfly on the flower, the wings, the summer light. Now you know that what you are seeing is the result of dissolution, that before that flight, there was the almost total destruction of a body and a reconstruction from zero. That what lands on that flower has eyes that see colors invisible to you, feet that taste the leaf before landing, wings that hear the ultrasound of a bat in the darkness, and that it traveled, or one of its ancestors traveled, thousands of kilometers guided by the sun, Earth's magnetic field, and polarized light to reach a forest in Michoacan that has been receiving butterflies for decades. The butterfly is not decoration. It is living proof that beauty can be born after losing everything. In its body, two lives fit, one that devours leaves in silence, and another that reads the sky with wings made of scales. And between those two lives, there is a sealed darkness, a laboratory where nature dismantles one creature and patiently raises another. That is why the next time a butterfly crosses in front of you, do not look at it as something fragile passing by. Look at it as an ancient survivor. Look at it as a signal. If it is there, there are still flowers, there are still caterpillars, there are still birds feeding, there is still an invisible network holding the place together. And if it is no longer there, perhaps the damage began before we noticed it. If this episode changed the way you see the butterfly, subscribe. Every week we take apart what we thought we already knew.